Okay, hello to you all. My name is Bill Hazeltine. I'm here today with Donna Tetreault as part of a series of interviews based on my book, Science is a Superpower. The goal of these conversations is to help empower and inspire young people. This is a passion that both Donna and I share. She's a well-known parenting journalist, author, speaker, and nonprofit founder. She's recently released a children's picture book called Dear Me, Letters to Myself for All of My Emotions. I have to say that's an important book for me because I had a good time going through it with my grandchildren. After I was done, the 7-year-old picked it up and read it through a second time. That's always a good sign, Donna, that children pick it up and look at it again themselves. I'm excited to be here today. I really enjoyed reading your new book. As I mentioned, it's a really important book because children need to recognize and manage their emotions, especially under the current conditions of COVID and the on again, off again kind of messages we're getting, and the children are getting too. So let's just begin. Would you like to tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book?
Absolutely. So I had always wanted to write a picture book, and actually a series of picture books for kids about self-love and self-compassion. And when we entered into this pandemic, I was in the middle of writing a picture book, and then I switched and really thought we need to really talk about emotions and how that learning about our emotions early on in life is really a strategy toward better mental health later in life. And, you know, I've been a parenting journalist for a long time, but my roots are in education. I was a teacher, kinder, first, fourth, and fifth grades. And I really believe in proactively teaching our children instead of reacting later on. And we have so many mental health issues with our tweens and teens. So why aren't we focusing on our very young children earlier on to combat bullying, academic achievement pressure, and then with this pandemic, everything that's been going on with our kids and in families?
You know, one thing I remember about the book is that there are a lot of different emotions that people feel. And why don't you describe some of those emotions and how children can get access to them and what this book does for them?
Well, it's interesting because we know from science that we can grow our empathy and our compassion and what we need to do in life to manage our mental health and well-being. And so we know emotions is part of that. And learning how to identify our emotions is the first step in managing our emotions. And this is really science-backed. So if we know how to, one, identify that emotion, whether it's good or bad, then move on to understanding that emotion, and then to feeling that emotion. And then once we identify, understand, feel, then we can manage that emotion. But we have to know that we can have all of these emotions. We're going to feel bad. We're going to feel mad. We're going to feel frustrated. So naming those emotions is really the first step.
Right. So the first step for the children who are looking at this book is to say, this is a feeling I have. And then what do you recommend they do about it? Because that's also really an important part of the book.
Absolutely. And so we know, again, from science, that we can do deep breathing, we can do journaling, and whether or not the child is old enough to write and journal, they can draw and journal. We know art therapy works. And so once they can identify, I am frustrated. Okay, so draw it. What does frustration look like to you? You know, or why don't you take those deep breaths? We know that we can breathe in and out and in and out and in and out. And that's what we're trying to do in the book, is showing these strategies throughout the book. It's the theme: breathing, journaling, identifying. So these are all strategies toward managing our emotions and then going toward better mental health.
What about the aspect of the book which is a letter to myself?
Yeah, here's the deal. I think that a lot of us are really hard on ourselves, and adults included. And so what I wanted to do was say, dear me. It's also a mantra. If I'm upset, I can pause and I can say, dear me, you're okay. I'm okay. You're fine. And so really just teaching this self-compassion toward ourselves, that it is okay that we're upset or we're mad, and we're saying to ourselves, take care of me, dear me, take care of me inside of me.
Right. I think one of the messages, and a very important message, is you're your number one caretaker.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't say it explicitly, but that's really what your dear me letters are. You're taking care of yourself for recognizing your emotion and then taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. You hit it, because really what I want kids to understand, and really as parents read this with their kids, that they can model this for their kids, is that I'm in charge of me. I'm in charge of me. And at the end of the book, we talk about how the child understands that mom is really proud of me for learning how to manage my emotions. But then the line follows, I am proud of myself too, because we need to teach our children that it's all from within. It doesn't matter the external, the environment, who's telling you you're great or whatever. If you don't feel it inside, it's not gonna.
That's maybe worth another book.
I love that. I love
that. That could be another book. Self-esteem is something else that's extremely important to instill in children very young. Let me tell you a story from, it wasn't exactly my youth. I was already a postdoctoral fellow. I had a very prestigious award. I sat down for breakfast with a very eminent older scientist. He actually is credited with helping create the doctor researcher in America. So he's played a really important role. His name was Harry Eagle, great name. And he sat me down one morning and he said, over breakfast, he said, so you want to be a scientist? I said, sure, that's why I'm here. Why do you think I'm here? You guys have given me money so I can be a scientist. It's really hard. I said, I've discovered that. He said, you fail most of the time. I said, I know that. I've done that too. But sometimes you do okay. He says, yeah. But the only people who could ever be successful are people who mother told them they were God's gift to the world, and they believed their mother. And so I said, okay, I fit. I can do it. So self-esteem is really important.
Really important.
It's important for perseverance. It's important to get through a lot of the tough things that everybody will have in life. So I think that could be worth another book, on another picture book. I'm looking forward to it, to go through it.
Thank you.
I'm hoping to have more than one set of grandchildren too, I might say.
Oh.
So we could do it again and again and again. When you have experience with your book and children, what do they say to you about it?
What's so delightful and has been so much fun is reading the book and doing author visits with young children. Even during coronavirus, they're masked up. And we talk about emotions, and we talk about different emotions that you can have, and multiple emotions at the same moment. And what's so interesting is when I ask the children, would you like to share your emotions now? Would you like to tell me how you're feeling right now in this moment? And the hands just go up. They are eager to share their emotions and to talk about feeling happy. One child told me, I feel calm. I said, wow, that's a good emotion that you can recognize you feel calm. Another one told me, I feel really anxious. And I said, why do you feel anxious? And this was a rising third grader, so second grader. And I said, why? And she said, well, I'm going to play in a soccer game on Saturday, and it's going to be hot, and I don't want to get trampled by the other players. And I said, well, okay, so what do you think you can do to help manage that anxiety? And the cutest little thing she said was, I think I can wear a tank top so that, she wouldn't be hot. And I said, see, you can manage your emotions. When you stop and think about your emotions, you can figure out what you can do to make yourself feel better. So I love that. I love hearing from these kids. and they're just talking about their emotions. They're
Well,
ready
that's
to
one of
talk
the
about
things I find with my book, Science is a Superpower. I love to talk to the students. And through Zoom, you can talk all over the world to these kids, and it's really great. And they ask all sorts of questions. One of them asked, how can you make money being a scientist?
it. Okay.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I didn't give the best of answers, but I gave an answer, and I think it was, I gave sort of an over-the-top answer. They just wanted to know that you could earn a living.
Well,
Not
and
make money.
what's so interesting about it is science is so mysterious. So to be able to really share that with kids, to get them to understand, I think is such a gift,
Mhm.
because you think science, like, what am I going to do?
Right.
You know?
Well, and I think kids are conditioned, there's a lot of superpowers out there. And the idea that they themselves can acquire a superpower to save humanity, that one person has and can and will do it again. And in fact, their lives are being changed right now by some superpowered scientists who figured out this vaccine. It's really kind
Right.
of relevant. When you're talking to teachers, what do you do? Having been a teacher, you can understand what teachers can do with your book. And do they use your book? And what is your conversation with teachers like?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We started to pilot the Dear Me curriculum that I wrote for second graders over this summer session. And what was
So
interesting,
you wrote a whole curriculum.
I did.
Describe that a little bit.
Sure. It's a 10 lesson curriculum that basically walks you through how to use the Dear Me book. And it really starts with how to teach teachers how to help kids identify their emotions and feelings. Also, to really pinpoint, here's the deal, kids. We really focus on our physical health, don't we? At home and at school. We talk about nutrition and fitness. So what we're going to do too is we're going to focus on our mental health, and to be really overt with the vocabulary and to say, we're going to learn about our emotions because our emotions matter to our mental health and well-being. Just like we take care of our physical health, we have to learn how to take care of our mental health.
Because mental health is, again, it's kind of like science. It's kind of this mysterious thing. And I have to say, unless you've experienced people with mental health, you don't get it. I think most people who don't have direct personal, and I mean close family experience, either themselves or other people, you don't get it. One of the explanations for that is human behavior has so many variables. There's such a wide range of normal. When you think of what's normal out there, it's kind of wide. And so what's outside of that range is very hard to recognize if you haven't been there before.
And it makes sense. You're right. Absolutely.
I think that's something that is important to communicate. There are things that are very wide within the bounds, but something outside the bounds. And when you're feeling that, because it's not just feeling emotions, it's when something's really wrong that you have to do something.
Right. Right.
Does your curriculum take you in that far? What happens when things are really wrong? Like you have a kid at home, either beaten or something else?
So the curriculum is not specific to trauma, but the curriculum is really, it serves as this proactive tool to get kids very early on. Because look, in your Forbes magazine, you wrote about the fact that pediatric mental health is in crisis. And so we weren't really looking at kind of teaching these strategies earlier to combat. And I think it's really important that that's what we do now. And I think it needs to be in the schools, but it also needs to be a parenting practice. I don't think that if I wasn't really aware, I wouldn't be teaching this inside the home with my boys. I mean, I have 12 and 13-year-old boys now who, I will tell them, you need to stop and breathe. Right? Because of what's going on right now.
What do you think I'm doing, Mom?
I know, especially my son on the golf course. You need to take some deep breaths here. But it's really kind of building it into their everyday life through mindfulness, through journaling, through breathing, and for having the open conversation that we're going to take care of your mental health too, just as much as your physical health.
One of the things I'm going to follow up with you on, and maybe have Anna part of this conversation, is what we can do to help build a curriculum for teachers for science as a superpower.
Amazing.
Because, I think that's such a good idea, because you take it beyond the book, you take it into their lives. So a book is a good thing to have, but when you actually supplement it with a curriculum, that's a very interesting thing to do. What we're doing right now is taking the material that's in that book and putting it into a graphic novel form.
Oh, what a good idea.
Because, the other thing that I noticed is that the graphic form is really compelling. I have picked up graphic books on topics I would never, ever read it. And I noticed he's now 7 just today, but the 6-year-old was doing the same thing with some very common, a biography of E.O. Wilson, the Ant-Man, right? A real ant researcher, not the Ant-Man. E.O. Wilson, a real scientist, an autobiography. And he was really enthralled because it was, and I think that's something, you do that with your book. It's not quite a graphic novel form, but it really does that. I think the images are really important.
Yeah, I got really lucky with my illustrator, and I couldn't agree with you more on the graphic novel form. I think that teens and tweens will just gravitate toward that.
I'm not a teen, and I liked it.
Exactly, I know, but for the kids that you want to reach.
And I read biographies of people and I learned things I never would have learned, because it's so easy. You sit down, it was wintertime, I sat down by the fireplace, I opened it up, and I would spend an hour and finish it off. It's a very, very good form.
Yeah.
I want to move into COVID a little bit, but I've just actually, I think maybe tomorrow or the next day, my next book is coming out. It's called
congratulations.
PTSD, COVID-related post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
And the idea there is, of course, first of all, something that many, 40, 50% of us have experienced. It's really a traumatic stress that we've gone through. And it isn't even post. Okay. We didn't drop the P. So that's part of it. But the point is, first of all, to name it. Like you name the emotions.
Yeah.
You name it, and you at least can begin to think about it. Second thing is, give it a diagnostic code so you can pay for it. Doctors don't do things they don't get paid for. Nobody does, just about, right? Maybe you and I have foundations that we do things we're not getting paid for, but most people need to get paid. It's just a fact of life. And so you don't get treated if there's no diagnostic code. And then I think you have to begin to take this in to help teachers. Because think of, you've been a teacher, think of what the teachers are going to experience. All these children are coming back. Some of them had a really tough time. People have died that they knew.
Yeah.
Their whole life has been restricted. And they're behind the learning curve. What a heavy lift for teachers. And if we don't put more help into the schools to help the kids that have suffered psychologically, we're going to have trouble, because the teachers can't handle it alone, because they themselves are stressed. The whole system is stressed. So I'm hoping that by naming it, by giving it this name, which I think is, I deliberately kept it in the category of PTSD, because that is reimbursable.
Okay.
Right. And, we're now thinking about calling long COVID a disability. That's also interesting. Those are all interesting things.
Interesting.
It'd be interesting for me to hear from you what you have learned about children's experience through COVID that your book can help them deal with.
It's interesting, because as you talk about this, I'm thinking about all of the funding that's going into schools, and how a lot of the funding doesn't have to be used. It could be used up until 2024, because we don't know what the effects are and that are coming down the, pike here. And so, the one thing that am hearing a lot from adults who read Dear Me, and who teachers who are reading it are saying, this is reminding me how to take care of me too. Because I'm seeing that, yeah, there are times where I'm frustrated, just like the kid in the book, he's got to have taco salad again instead of regular old tacos. And so they're able to
Taco
identify
Tuesday.
it.
My grandson is Taco Tuesday.
Right.
It's Waffle Wednesday.
I like that. I like that. I might take that. But they're saying to me, it was kind of a good reminder for me to kind of give myself a little breath, and to give myself, the ability to say, you're okay too, and you're going through a lot too.
Have you talked to other kids about their experience with COVID, what they say?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a lot of kids who, what they're saying is they miss the friendships. They talk a lot about school being boring, as it was presented to them, which makes complete sense. And then even though they returned to school, some of them with the masking, it just wasn't the same. They couldn't have those same conversations. And especially for the kids who are transferring from like grammar school to middle school, and when you've got to make all new friends, that was the case with one of my sons. That was difficult because you're going into a new school and you can't really meet people the way you normally do. So that whole social thing for those middle schoolers and high schoolers, that's what they're supposed to be doing. And they lost out.
A back to school book for elementary and and middle school kids. It's really important because it's not going to, teachers are going to need a lot of help with that. And that's one of the things that came out of, and actually what you referenced one of the Forbes articles, but that was actually part of the work when we're doing all the research on what is the when you think about the stress disorder, it's the entire society. It's actually a very unusual situation when the entire society is stressed. And you have sort of group behaviors, which are anxiety, depressions, anger. You can see the anger that's there, and there's so many stories about really inappropriate anger, but it's not. It's anger that's bottled up in them, and then can just flash out over a very, very minor incident. You see a lot of spousal abuse.
Yes.
And the numbers are really astonishing. Drug use, suicides, a lot of behavior that's actually classic post-traumatic stress disorder that happens in ways that change the statistics for the whole country, and then change many individual lives and are affecting our kids. And so I think it's a really important area to get into, and really, I think, for everybody to try to understand. But back to your book, I think a good starting point is your book for the teachers. It's really, for me, it was a really important book. It was surprising also because there's so few books that do that. That's the other thing. I mean, you found an area which, you can go to a library and there's be 1,000 children's books and they don't do what your book does.
Oh, well, thank you. That's to hear that from you is extremely meaningful. I really am grateful to hear that from you.
You probably know that because I don't know if your publishers say, hey, this is going to be I hope it's selling well. Is it selling well?
It is. It's doing really well. And I'm trying to get it into schools now. The El Monte School District, since we piloted it, they're going to pick up the book for their primary students this fall. I'm trying to get it into LA Unified, where I was a teacher back in the day, for their primary. So I'm trying to get it into the schools. But again, like I said, I am trying to get it into the homes, because I think that it has to be this three-pronged approach. It has to be child, teacher / school, and parents at home. And that's kind of how it was when I was a teacher. In conferences, it shouldn't have just been the teacher and the parent conference. It should be child, teacher, parent, so that we're all working together. We're all on the same page.
Right.
And I think that parents reinforcing that and being just aware. Parents are overwhelmed, right? With trying to figure out what to do. Now you got to tell me I got to teach my kid about mental health. You know what I mean? So to
Well,
try
you
to
know,
do it in a simple
yeah,
way.
I think the transition you're making is between teaching kids to understand their feelings and the connection to that to mental health.
Yes.
And mental health is handling part of mental health is handling your feelings well because you have the capacity to do it. Another part of mental health, unfortunately, is because you lack the capacity.
Yeah.
You really lack it.
Right.
And that's another shading of where mental health goes. But I think the way you've constructed it is it's take care of your body, take care of your mind,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's a very, very important message. Well, listen, this has been a delightful conversation. Let's hope we can continue it over your next book and my next book.
Absolutely. It's been an honor. Thank you so
It's my
much.
pleasure. Thank you. Take
All
care.
right.
Bye.
Bye.